There is a kind of person who gives so much of themselves that they forget there is anything left to keep. A person who smiles even when they're tired, who agrees even when it hurts, who says it's fine even when it isn't. A person who carries everyone else's emotions as if they're responsible for them. If this is you, you know the quiet ache of constantly trying to be the easy one, the reliable one, the one who never becomes a burden. You know how heavy it feels to be the person everyone depends on, while having no one to collapse into. But here is the part the world rarely understands. People-pleasing isn't kindness. It's self-protection disguised as generosity. It's a survival instinct, born in the moments you learned that love could be lost if you weren't agreeable enough. Inside the mind of a people-pleaser, every choice feels like a test. Every no feels dangerous. Every boundary feels a risk. Every disagreement feels like rejection. Today, we're stepping inside that mind, into the roots, the patterns, the fears, and the quiet self-erasure that people-pleasers carry alone. Not to judge it, not to shame it, but to understand it, with compassion. Let's begin. People-pleasing doesn't begin in adulthood. It's not a personality trait you developed. It's a survival pattern you learned. And almost always, it begins in childhood. Not necessarily in traumatic events, but in emotional environments where being yourself didn't always feel safe. Here are the childhood roots behind this pattern. 1. Conditional love. You may have grown up around people who gave affection when you behaved, when you were quiet, when you were helpful, when you didn't make things difficult. Love felt earned, not given. So your young mind learned, if I'm good, I'm loved. If I'm difficult, I'm alone. 2. Emotional responsibility. Maybe you were the child who tried to keep the peace, who softened arguments, who watched adults shift moods and tried to prevent things from getting worse. You learned to manage other people's emotions before you ever learned to understand your own. 3. Fear of disapproval. When criticism felt harsh or rejection felt big, your mind adapted. You became agreeable, pleasant, predictable, easy. Because being easy felt safer than being real. 4. Parentification or early maturity. Some people-pleasers grew up too fast. Carrying responsibilities meant for adults. You had to be stable, even when you were just a child. You learned, my needs don't matter as much as keeping others okay. 5. Inconsistent affection. When affection came in waves, warm one day, cold the next, you learned to adjust yourself to whatever version of someone showed up. Your identity became flexible so you could stay safe. None of this was your fault. You adapted, in the only way you knew how. You survived by becoming agreeable, helpful, attentive, predictable. But the child who learned to please grows into an adult who feels guilty for having needs, and terrified of disappointing others. This is where people-pleasing truly begins, not in kindness, but in childhood fear. And that fear grows into something else, an adult who seeks approval as if their life depends on it. Which leads us to the next part. People think people-pleasers want to be liked, but that's not the truth. People-pleasers want to feel safe. Because deep down, approval isn't about praise, it's about protection. Here's the psychology behind it. 1. The fawning response. In psychology, there are 4 trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawning is when you become overly accommodating to avoid conflict, rejection, or emotional harm. It sounds like, whatever you need. It's okay, don't worry about me. I can handle it. Even when you're breaking inside. You're not being nice. You're trying to survive. 2. Rejection sensitivity. For people-pleasers, even small signs of disapproval feel like danger. A sigh, a change in tone, a short reply, a pause that lasts a second too long. Your mind fills in the silence with guilt. What did I do wrong? Not because you're insecure, but because you learned that rejection hurts in a way your body never forgot. 3. Identity through service. Somewhere along the way, you learned that your value comes from what you provide. Help, support, compliance, stability. Not from who you are, but from what you can offer. So when someone is disappointed in you, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like losing your worth. 4. Emotional hyperattunement. People pleasers are emotionally intelligent, sometimes to their own detriment. You read moods, you sense tension, you anticipate needs before they're spoken. It's not mind reading, it's survival. Your nervous system scans for danger in other people's emotions, and the fastest way to feel safe is to keep everyone else comfortable. 5. The guilt loop. People pleasers carry a deep, persistent guilt for resting, for saying no, for having boundaries, for needing something. You weren't taught that needs are allowed. You were taught that they are burdens. So approval becomes relief, and disapproval becomes pain. This is why approval feels addictive, not because it feels you, but because it stops the fear of being unwanted. But the more approval you chase, the more you lose touch with who you really are. And that leads to the next part, where the inner conflict becomes impossible to ignore. Inside every people pleaser, there are two versions of you silently pulling in opposite directions. One version is you, your desires, your limits, your truth. And the other version is the one you became to keep the peace. This inner conflict is constant, quiet, and exhausting. Here's what it sounds like. 1. The desire to be honest versus the fear of disappointing someone. You feel the truth rising in your chest, a need to say, I can't, or I don't want to, or this doesn't feel right. But the moment you try to speak, a second voice appears. Don't upset them. They'll think you're selfish. They'll be disappointed. Just let it go. And so you silence yourself to keep others comfortable. 2. The desire to rest versus the guilt for needing a break. Even when you're exhausted, drained, running on empty, you feel guilty for stepping back. Your mind whispers, you should be stronger. You're letting someone down. You don't deserve to rest. And you push yourself harder than anyone else would ask you to. 3. The desire to be seen versus the fear of being too much. You want connection, a space where you can exist without shrinking. But you've spent so long making yourself small that being seen feels terrifying. What if they don't like the real me? What if I'm too sensitive? What if I'm too emotional? So you hide behind being easy, even when it hurts. 4. The desire to say no versus the fear of conflict. You know no would protect your energy. You know you don't have the time or the capacity or the emotional space. But your body reacts to the idea of conflict as if it's danger. Your heart races, your stomach tightens, your voice disappears. So you say yes even when every part of you wanted to say no. 5. The desire to be loved versus the fear that love is conditional. This is the deepest conflict of all. You want love that allows you to be human, flawed, tired, imperfect, real. But a part of you still believes that love comes with requirements. Be pleasant, be agreeable, be quiet, be low maintenance, be everything they need and nothing they don't. So you trade authenticity for acceptance, even though the acceptance never feels real. This is the people pleaser's inner world, a constant tug of war between who you are and who you think you must be to stay safe. But this conflict creates something deeper, emotional exhaustion that no one else sees. And that is what we explore next. People-pleasing looks gentle on the outside, polite, helpful, accommodating. But on the inside, it slowly drains a person in ways the world never sees. Because every yes you give when your heart wants to say no leaves a quiet mark. And those marks add up. Here's the emotional cost of always being the one who bends. 1. Burnout that doesn't look like burnout. You keep functioning. You keep showing up. You keep smiling.
You don't collapse, you slowly fade. Your energy thins out until even simple tasks feel heavy. But no one notices because you've trained the world to expect your strength without seeing your struggle. 2. Emotional numbness. When you spend your life managing other people's needs, your own emotions become background noise. You learn to mute yourself to stay agreeable. Eventually, you can't tell what you actually feel because your attention is always on how everyone else feels. This is how a person disappears without anyone realizing it. 3. Hidden resentment. You don't want to feel resentful. You don't want to feel bitterness. You don't want to feel tired of giving. But when you're always the one who adjusts, the one who accommodates, the one who holds everything together, your heart begins to whisper,